He seemed like a
Yeah.
really nice guy. Need to get our thing.
Music.
All right. Let's see if it's going to play. You going to play? One viewer on YouTube is probably doing. Oh, sure. We ended up with 26 just over here. Okay, we're back again.
Welcome back to the Ides of March. This is the fifth
anniversary. It's our 50th episode. We missed a few months back in the last year.
I'm Yvonne, and this is Lou. This is my brother, and we've been doing this for 5 years. Started out as a Trump supporter thing.
2018.
Make the Ides great again, because the Ides used to be a time of celebration.
Used to be the
new
beginning
year
of the new year. We're looking now today. It's a beautiful day. At least here it is, and this should be the new year. this should be the beginning of the year. And
right. And
debt forgiveness sometimes, and planting and new life and stuff, and just positive things. And Shakespeare took that
and turned it into something
turned
dark.
it into
beware the Ides
beware.
of March.
So we put in the title, Beware the Ides of March. Where are you? What are you doing? And,
yeah.
As with everything in this world's inverted. And just like with the apocalypse part of our title of our channel too.
The meaning of that is inverted.
And it's actually a positive thing. And apocalypse is also something that each and every one of us go through ourselves. It's an awakening,
a great revealing,
an unveiling of
an
things.
Awakening.
Yeah.
And it's a positive thing. It should be.
I also subtitled this stream 5 years of casting away the fear. So as we've evolved over the last 5 years with this channel, we've gone into looking at history in a different way, looking at the narratives that we've been told, because the devil runs this world. God has ultimate control over it.
But he gave us dominion over the dark forces of this world, and that's what a lot of people don't understand or realize. And so we like to go back, and we can't figure out what was true and what wasn't true, but we can definitely deconstruct events in history and show that it didn't happen the way they said it happened.
And, God tells us in Proverbs to pray for discernment. So he's given us tools. And one of a couple of things that we have always liked, especially over the last few years, tried to get across to our audience are things like, don't submit and don't subsume your own discernment to talking heads on TV and people in positions of so-called power. Like I was thinking yesterday of Janet Yellen. She was the Federal Reserve. Now she's the Treasury Secretary.
Right.
I'm like, there's a couple of things with this. Don't subsume your own discernment, or just your own
intelligence, your take on things,
your own opinion on things to these people,
to these authorities. Because who's the author is in the word authorities, and the only reason people look to these people as authorities is because we've been conditioned and primed to. But you have a brain. God gave you discernment, and also in the Bible it's the glory of God to conceal a thing, and the glory of kings to
I can't remember
figure that. I'm totally butchering this, but the glory of kings to figure out those secrets. But
it's also, don't fear any of these people either.
Especially right now we're going through these times of uncertainty with the economy and bank crashes and all the talk of Great Depressions and the ending of the dollar.
We've also tried to, we first started back in 2018, 19, and 20. We were talking about, don't, when a news story breaks, wait 24, 48 hours.
Right.
Well, I say just wait and just look at it, step back and just what are they actually saying?
Especially
really
right now. Much. Especially right now.
Every time when and it gets, especially with COVID and things like that.
Yeah.
It was, if everybody's on the same, if the media is on the same page, the politicians are on the same page, the people from Hollywood are on the same page with you, maybe not, don't take it at face value.
Right, because it's like the same MO every time. It's everybody's on the same narrative. It looks like there's going to be a bank crash, the ending of the dollar, all these things, but we don't know if that's really true. We know we have a financial system that's built on a house of cards, and something might change, but they're talking about like Great Depression era times. But Blue and I were talking before the stream started. Is
that story?
Was the Great Depression really what you were told? Because the people that were hurt the most in the Great Depression were people that had lots of debts. So I could see why the people that were involved in the Silicon Valley Bank, they had lots of debts. It may not be as bad as we're thinking, but all they have to do is create the panic and the fear that it will be.
But even if a lot of this stuff happens, is it going to affect you so bad?
Right.
And just remember at the base of it and we always post at the end of our streams about, this is not a battle against flesh.
Right.
It's against the spirits, the principalities of this world. And, if some people have health problems and stuff, but if you're alive, there's something good going on there.
Yeah.
And it's,
think about how great we still have it here. Our blessings, those of us who didn't buy into the COVID, or even some of y'all that did and then woke up.
Yeah.
We're not that bad off. You turn on the TV and you listen to the news for a while, and it's like it's all panic and all fear and all uncertainty. But then if you turn it off,
and they want you to react in a negative way to that.
They want your that negative energy.
Me and Yvonne were talking before we started today, is we look back at, we talked our grandparents and our we knew our great grandmother
who lived to be 98. She was born in like 1894.
She never talked about the Spanish flu or the Great Depression. And she would have been in her 20s during the Spanish flu, and in getting into her 30s.
And one of the things we talked to her about a lot was history.
Oh, because me and Yvonne we've had a love of history since we were kids.
Never once mentioned it. Neither one of them.
No, they never talked about that. So was it that big of an impact?
Granddad didn't?
No.
Well, that one book that I read about the Battle of Athens, that guy, when he was interviewing people in Tennessee about the Battle of Athens, one of the things he said about the Great Depression is those people there that lived outside of big cities, they had no idea that there was this Great Depression. They were eating and living.
Just like there's actually accounts of, during the Civil War, there were people that didn't know a war was going on in this country, that were outside of the major stuff.
Well, that's a whole nother rabbit hole too.
Yeah. We could do another stream on that.
Yeah.
But what we're going to do today is kind of look back over the last 5 years. We're going to look at some current events too, just to kind of go back and forth with it. But I'm also going to just look at some of our old episode titles and just kind of remember, because as we've evolved, we've gone away from Trumpy Bears back there in the corner.
Yeah. What's he doing? Oh, there he is.
He's doing what he always does. He's got his wild orange hair going.
Right.
But, one of them, Sticks and Stones. Remember that one?
Yeah.
About words, about can they hurt you and
right.
stuff. Right.
Sticks and stones may break my bone, but words will never hurt. No, words are literally how they cast their spells, and how, if you can get everybody on the same page, like think during COVID, like before COVID, we went from Wuhan to coronavirus to COVID. And then the terminology that came out of that, stop the spread.
Alone together.
Yes. Social distancing, which,
worst.
That's a contradiction in terms. Words are how they cast spells. The news, when they do a broadcast, is that a broadly cast spell?
Uh-huh.
So now, sticks and stones may hurt you, but words, the Bible says that words are more powerful than the sword.
Yeah.
So that's why we should be careful with our words, because also in the Bible is the power of the tongue, that he will give you for good or for evil what you speak of. So we should all be careful, but be cognizant of the fact that words mean things and words matter. So we need to stop accepting the words as they define them. Especially
the narrative too that go along with that. We need to just stop accepting this stuff at face value.
Right.
We did a couple of episodes on the word nostalgia.
Yeah.
The first one a year and a half ago or so, and just that people used to be diagnosed with nostalgia.
Right.
Started in the 1600s with Swiss mercenaries.
Yeah.
And it was, people that are away from especially soldiers that are away from their homes.
Right.
And, what is war? What is it good for? That's, I used to be against, the peaceniks and all that stuff.
Right,
and now
I know.
There's a lot of things that we've changed our attitude about. And nostalgia is one of those big words where you can have you can have a false nostalgia. And there's a lot of this still going on with people. Remember when the news used to be objective? Well, it never, it never was.
When was it? In Vietnam, they reported on a false flag, the Gulf of Tonkin, to get us in the Vietnam War. You can go back to all the wars.
A lot of people still revere Walter Cronkite.
Right.
And he was
a total propagandist.
He was just an actor himself.
Walter Durante.
And so in the nostalgia episodes, we talked about check what you're actually remembering. Are you remembering a time the way it was portrayed to you? Or are you remembering an era or a time the way you experienced it?
Right.
And so, or that, like we used to talk to our grandparents a lot about, stuff in the past.
Right.
Experience it through, it's kind of secondhand, but it's through somebody you know, love, and trust more. But are you remembering a narrative, or are you remembering actual experiences? And so that was another thing.
When people want to go back to normal, I don't want to go back to normal. We were all living in a dream almost.
We had kind of like scales over our eyes and our heart, maybe, that just, if you're comfortable in this world, things may not be going the way they should be.
Right.
Because Jesus said, and you will have trouble in this world.
And that they hated him before they hated you.
He said, I overcome this world too.
Right.
But he said, you will have trouble. So trouble is part of it.
Right.
And it's also it's how you grow.
Right.
And get closer to God too, and learning lessons and things.
How your personality is honed.
I heard something a week or two ago. I can't remember where it was, but it was somebody prayed for patience, and then a friend told him, oh, you shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Because now God's going to send all kinds of stuff to you to test you and turn you into a patient person. So which means you're going to have, it was kind of like a joke, but it's real. It's like when you pray for things, God's going to give you what he's ready for you to have.
Even when you're not praying, when you're speaking, that's why I think like a lot of hypochondriacs are always sick. They speak it. If you think about it, our words are like programming for our brain is just this computer. And, maybe that's all power of the tongue is you're sending these instructions to your brain. So be careful with those words.
Thinking about current events, we did one like 4 years ago we had a couple of guests one from Texas, one from the Northeast, titled Libraries Are Becoming a Drag.
Yeah.
And this is about the Drag Queen Story Hour. And this is it was really starting to kind of bust open.
Right. And now of libraries.
Oh, come on. There we go.
We need to be getting hard copies of books instead of, depending on your Kindle or a digital format, because the way things are going.
If it's digital, it's going to be changed.
Right.
And who knows what's already been changed.
Right. That's another thing. One of the reasons that we do these things is history a lie agreed upon. Mm-hmm. Everything that you've been taught. I was thinking about this, what you learn, our education in school, and how they lied to us. And of course, they're not teaching all these children the truth about history.
Yeah.
The point of public education is to create slaves for corporations. It's not to educate or enlighten you. So
I think it was Rockefeller that said, I don't want a nation of thinkers. I want a nation of workers.
Right.
So we did Eureka, the deplatforming of Edgar Allan Poe a couple of years ago. That's one of my favorite
ones.
We did a follow-up on that one.
It's really not that long, the one that we did, Eureka.
That was less than 40 minutes.
If you haven't seen it, it's a really interesting one, and it's not that long.
We just found another episode in history where we were told one thing. We got given a narrative on Poe, that how dark and melancholy he was, and it turns out he's a very funny guy. He's very talented. Had a lot to look out for. He had a lot of things going well when he died, and
he was not this dark, like, alcoholic. He wasn't even an alcoholic. That was like a total lie. But the fact that we know all of these movies, the Cask of Amontillado, the Telltale Heart, and that we'd never heard of this book called Eureka, and he considered it his masterpiece, and it was the last thing he wrote a year before his death. It was just kind of interesting, and it's called Eureka. That was our Eureka moment too.
That was one for us too,
and it was also an interesting book. They thought they used to categorize him as atheist, and if you read Eureka,
he believes in God. Definitely, he said there's no other way.
And he
us to be here.
He said that beautiful line. He said, "The universe is a plot of the plots of God are perfect, and the universe is a plot of God."
Right. He had some deep thinking going on in that thing.
Definitely.
We could do a whole year on that
book.
We did one episode 20, do all roads lead to Rome?
Right.
And
well,
a lot of people do think something like that.
Yeah. So we've we always go back to World War II, that something really went down and changed in this country.
That was a huge catalyst, and there were foundations laid in 1913 with Jekyll Island. With World War I.
But then it goes back further, we think, to Rome.
Mm-hmm.
Did Rome really fall? It's like World War II. Did the Nazis really lose? And we kind of contend that the Nazis.
Think the principalities of this world do need to migrate.
Right, and so you go back to Rome. Do all roads lead to Rome? And you look at a lot of our, like, the buildings in DC have kind of a Romanesque kind of look.
Greco-Roman architecture.
We use this Latin language, so we don't think that Rome fell. They just dispersed. And then even beyond Rome, I guess it would go back to Babylon, and then back to the beginning of his history.
God, we have a bunch of them.
Or his story.
Oh, yeah, this is one I wanted to bring up. We talked about Epstein and Dutroux.
Oh, Dutroux. Mark Dutroux. Is it Dutroux or
Dutroux? And it really is about the children, that episode. And we talked, Belgium had its own
White March, the White March, remember?
Yeah. And that was what, in the 90s?
Yeah, so Dutroux was like think of an Epstein.
For minor players, maybe?
Yeah, but more
smaller.
sinister. He killed.
Yeah, he killed him too, and got bitten. But he was protected somehow by the state, and they had huge.
Right.
We had never heard of it, but it was in the mid '90s where they had these huge protests in Belgium.
It's called the White. Then one day it was called the White March.
Yeah.
And where they took, firemen took fire hoses to like city halls, and because they were so dirty, like.
Well, in the capital of Belgium, there were so many people at one of the main protests. The equivalent in the U.S., I think we figured out it would have been like 15 million people in the one place.
Yeah, it was huge.
We had never heard of that, and it was just another a really bad actor.
And of course, back when that happened, it was when the internet wasn't that big, so alternative media and stuff really wasn't. It wasn't like mass market where you could just find out. Yeah. So of course the media, ABC and NBC we're not going to be reporting that to us.
And Vaughn mentioned earlier the Battle of Athens, and that's the Battle of
a good one.
Athens, Tennessee.
Yeah.
Right after World War II. And it was a bunch of local GIs that got home and saw that there was a lot of corruption with the sheriff's department and the judicial system.
A lot of that corruption we tied to Shelby County. Was it Boss Crump? Yeah.
He was kind of leading the Tennessee. He was kind of running the Tennessee
cartel or mafia
or whatever,
And they saw that elections were being stolen and
outright, and they actually had a battle, and nobody died.
A gun battle.
They holed up in the courthouse. It was so flagrant. I mean, these guys,
the sheriff and stuff, were coming in there trying to take, the voting boxes.
They grabbed them and they took them to the courthouse.
Right.
And they weren't going to let them.
And so these GIs, they just took care of business. The mayor fled and went to Atlanta. Yeah. I don't think he ever came back. And then some of these guys ended up running for office in a legitimate election. And I guess we had clean elections for at least maybe a decade or so. I don't know how long it takes to corrupt. But that's an interesting story if you don't know about. And I asked Lou this. I was wondering, how many Battle of Athens? Are there more of them that happened across the U.S.?
And I had looked up, and I think I found one. I can't remember where it was. I think it was in the Midwest somewhere. And some guys took back their county. It was basically taking back their county is what they did. Because all the men, really able-bodied men were off to war. Most of these guys were in the Pacific.
Yeah.
And they came back. They came back to harassment by the deputies because they made money by trumping up charges on people and charging fines and stuff. And these guys came back from the war and said, wait, I was on these islands in the Pacific fighting so-called for democracy. And back home, it was being just torn apart.
Right.
And,
But, that's what all these wars did is they took away the
strong,
men away from home. And then these charlatans that
ones
stayed behind or were able to get out of the draft are left to take over.
Another good one is, what exactly is a Langmuir?
Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
We got that from Owen because he did a little thing on the Epidemic Intelligence Service,
which we'd never heard of,
which was formed in the early 50s under the CDC.
They still have this.
Yeah, and actually, it's almost like you enlist in this thing for 2 years and you get some kind of credentials or something.
Right.
But a lot of these people that came out of the Epidemic Intelligence Service went on to become heads of health departments throughout the world. And they had the same. And in this Epidemic Intelligence Service in the 50s, they're talking about contact tracing and distancing and things, and how to fight the next pandemic and all
how
this.
to track.
And one of the key things with this Langmuir guy is that one of his, he had actually said in an interview, he was proud of it. I mean, he wasn't trying to hide it.
Right.
He thought that one of the biggest scourges on the world was human population growth. So
think about that. Somebody that's in epidemiology who was with the CDC, and he thought, when it wasn't called the CDC back then, it was the
Federal Health Service. The CDC was formed by them.
Okay.
But the Federal Health, and that goes into the Tuskegee experiment.
Yeah.
Because it was started in the 30s. So
Right.
this man comes into the CDC with starting the Epidemic Intelligence Service, and in the 50s. So for 20 years, they've already been experimenting on Black people with
that
syphilis.
started in 42, I think.
30.
32.
30s. 30.
Okay.
And it
In
went
all the
on
way to 72.
73 or something when
Yeah.
that journalist broke it. And so he's there in the middle of it. He's there with them for over 20. I mean, he was with the CDC all the way into the 70s.
He was a long time. And so one of the things that was interesting to Lou and I about Langmuir is that when the media would describe him and talk about, they would say that
had
he
a
was
commanding
distinguished
presence.
and commanding
He would
presence.
take
And
it.
when we watched,
He was a
interviews,
tall dude, but he was very meek.
kind of like Comey,
Yeah.
just a dweeb
Yeah.
who had height.
Yeah.
And so we would be listening to these interviews, and
And we play a couple of clips of him in that episode.
He has to look down and read his own biography.
He can't even just say what he did in his life.
I'm like, so they're just lying. It's kind of like what they do now when, like Samantha Bee, they do these commercials. They try to make her program you and condition you to think she's funny. But with all these different people, if you have in mind that somebody just, distinguished or respectable or trustworthy, like they told us that Robert Mueller and James Comey, that respected by Republicans and Democrats, and then when you listen to him, so partisan,
He's
and
cringe,
idiot, and cringe, and it's like they just lie, but they craft, they're programming your mind. I think that's the key, is that that's what media does. They try to program what your thoughts are and everything.
They present it. They present the people.
Right. And then you've been conditioned, and all your life you've been conditioned and primed to accept.
And your false nostalgia gives you a sense that it carries over into these institutions that you can listen to them.
Right.
We did one a couple of years ago called Operation Overcast, which that was the original name for Operation Paperclip.
Right.
And that's the bringing of all the Nazi scientists and they talked about military applications, but what they also did was brought over a lot of Nazi doctors.
Right.
And so they brought a lot of that over. And then with
doctors, scientists, intelligence.
And that ties into all of that would have had to have gone on under Ike.
Right.
Eisenhower.
Yeah.
So we did a show the month before last about
We don't
Ike.
like Ike.
We don't like Ike because
everybody like that. People on the right and truthers and so-called conspiracy theory people like to tout him as a hero, but he's not. He helped lay the groundwork for what he
all that
warned
we
us
have today. He was in office when
they began NATO.
Well, they began NASA, NATO. They also began the Epidemic Intelligence Service, which we just talked about.
Right. And then on his last day in office, he's got
after 8 years. After 8 years, he goes, "Hey guys, you better look out for this stuff.
Right,
it's going to get bad."
But speaking of Operation Paperclip, and I Lou and I don't. Supposedly they brought in thousands. We think they brought in
a lot
more than that. But I mean,
at one point there were over 400,000 Nazi prisoners in the U.S.
right
during the war. They took a long time to ship them back to Europe, and I don't think a lot of them went. Most of them went back, maybe,
right.
But a lot of them didn't go back.
So America has never had to apologize or really even speak on that, or Operation Paperclip. They pretty much admitted it's true, but nobody's apologized. You know, the head of NASA was, Werner von Braun.
Yeah.
But I think that'd be a good time to talk about this I know in one of our streams we talked about the Red House report.
Briefly, we touched on it, and with Werner von Braun, his brother was even worse.
Right.
We found when we did a show on that, Werner von Braun, how he was this Nazi guy, ran these camps. His brother was
worse,
very hands-on.
But Werner, I want to say Werner because when you speak German, the W's are pronounced with a V. But in the times that we're in now, where these so-called bank runs and ending the dollar, and a lot of us think that it's intentional and they're doing this on purpose because they want to reset us into this coin-based digital currency. So that's why I want to talk about the Red House report. Supposedly it was a leaked secret document that was around 1944. It was a 3-page, closely typed report marked secret, copied to British officials and sent by air pouch to Cordell Hull, the U.S. Secretary of State, which Lou and I have talked in previous streams that we believe the secretaries of states and other positions in our government probably actually have more power than the president, and maybe they're handlers of some sort.
Yeah.
We don't know. So it's interesting that
there was a lot going on with Roosevelt. There were people.
Definitely. With all of them, though.
I don't think he was his own man.
I don't either. But anyway, this report detailed how the industrialists were to work with the Nazi Party to rebuild Germany's economy by sending money through Switzerland. And they would set up a network of secret front companies abroad, and they would wait until conditions were right, like now, and then they would take over Germany again. But their goal was that they were already planning on the rise of the Fourth Reich, which would not be a military empire; it would be an economic empire. And
which is that describes the U.S. right now.
Right. Let me go to the last paragraph. Present to a dark past. Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's propaganda chief, once said, in 50 years, nobody will think of nation states. So I guess that was his goal. But now all the globalists...
And this is another good time to go. Just remember, we say they. For me, it's Satan in the end, but there are all kinds of factions out there that have plans and schemes, and
right.
They do want stuff to happen a certain way.
But their plans usually go awry.
They end up failing because they're not based on truth.
So even in here, it says, for now, the nation state endures, but these 3 typewritten pages are a reminder that today's drive towards a European federal state is inexorably tangled up with the plans of the SS and German industrialists for a Fourth Reich, an economic rather than a military imperium. Now, tangled up with the SS. World War II, we've always been taught that the Nazis won, but then Stalin's Germany supposedly killed more people than Hitler. So we don't really think that the Nazis lost. And when the enemy always accuses you of that which they are guilty, and so you should keep that in mind when they're trying to label Trump supporters Nazis. Maybe that's because they're the Nazis, and look what they're doing.
It's thrown around. It's thrown out there a lot.
Yeah.
But just looking at the Eisenhower stuff and Operation Paperclip and bringing thousands and thousands of guys over,
right.
He was in charge of the Allied armies during that time that they would have had to have been grabbing all these guys. So he helped, like we said earlier, he helped lay the foundations for all of these things.
Or, Was it? Did he really do that? Who's behind? Because that's another thing we've learned is we really don't think these presidents have all that much power.
We think it kind of goes back. It depends on the men in the position. So we've talked to, I talked to Yvonne a few months ago about, are the secretaries of state in some instances the ones that are actually the one behind the throne
running things?
And it just depends.
But
what tears apart that theory right now is Anthony Blinken to Biden. It's like, that's two blind mice right there.
Yeah.
So there's somebody
behind.
And is it Victoria Nuland? I mean,
right. Or what's her name? Susan Wright or Valerie Plame.
Yeah, or something like that.
Not Valerie Plame. Valerie
Jarrett.
Yeah.
So it's not a solid theory, but we've thought, was Condoleezza Rice running George W. Bush?
Right. And see with Trump, so
she's still out there saying a bunch of
there's
stupid crap.
A lot of people that still love Trump, and I still like him, Flu. I know that.
Me and Yvonne, I'm further along on the cynicism chart on.
Yeah. So, but I'm open to the fact that Trump might be run too. But I just don't. I mean, if we gave him the benefit of the doubt, I would say that Jared Kushner was his handler, and he was running. Maybe the handler, like the Secretary of State or whatever. The people around, like Mike Pompeo, was Secretary. I forget who was Secretary of State before Mike Pompeo. I can't remember.
I always forget.
Or maybe it was always him.
But that's another instance of a CIA director being a Secretary of State.
Personally, if you were the head of the CIA, you should be nowhere near the positions of leadership. You just shouldn't. So we don't know the truth on any of this. We just don't believe.
We're just looking from the outside now with a different lens, and we just like to try to break it down and just see it in a different way and just put ideas out there.
Right.
And speaking of that, I was brought up to Yvonne a week ago about, we're starting to see, it's called a uniparty. There's not a difference between Republicans, Dems, and there is. I think they are factions that are working towards the same thing, but they do kind of fight each other. But you notice that over the decades, that a lot of our cultural slides and economic slides and just the sliding of America into Gomorrah, a lot of it is accelerated when there's a Republican president.
Right.
And you could take this back to Abraham Lincoln.
Yep.
I mean, habeas corpus, the suspension of that, arresting governors, putting ex-governors in jail that were running Van Landingham from Ohio during the war was going to run for president. Lincoln put him in jail because he was saying he was a Confederate spy. And so maybe he was a huge Confederate spy.
But maybe you're just saying he was, because there's a bunch of we got a bunch of dissidents in DC gulags right now that y'all are.
And you take Lincoln, his great, is it the Gettysburg Address where he says that at the end so that a government by the people, for the people, of the people, I can't remember how it goes, shall not perish from this earth. Well, if it's by the people, of the people, for the people, why are you enlisting Irishmen in Europe to come fight over here to put these guys down?
There were Russians involved in the Civil War.
Oh yeah,
Russia. Go to Russia.
The Russian Navy on the Pacific and the Atlantic helped blockade ports.
Right.
Helped initiate the blockade of the Confederacy. So.
Right.
So looking at Republican presidents with the slide, we can just we can leap forward to Reagan.
Right.
You get the first amnesty, you get.
They told us 4.6 million, but it was probably way more.
Yeah.
We get no fault divorce. The big pharma gets immunity codified into law. That happened. And then with Bush, of course, you had the Patriot Act after 9/11. And then with Trump, the last year with, all the COVID tyranny. I mean, if Hillary had been president, we would not have locked down and there would have been no mask mandates because Republicans would have fought back.
But there wouldn't have been as much waking up either, I don't think. So
there's, that's true. So
in the end, it is God's plan.
Yeah.
So I'm just
challenging you.
I can't believe I would say this, but I'm looking forward to 2024, and I'm thinking, would it be better if a Democrat was still president so that there would still be some pushback? Because when you think about this, hey babe, when you think about how we're sliding and this system cannot stand, it's so corrupt, it's so evil, it can't keep going. You want to come up with alternatives. You want to get to where you can maybe homestead, or if you're not homesteading,
Right.
you know people who are,
Yeah.
so that you can get, off the government teat,
Right.
not be so dependent on the system. So my thinking, well, maybe a Democrat should be president from here on out, is that with at least some pushback, maybe the slide slows down a little bit.
Right.
Because we need time, because, as you consider yourself awake or whatever, you need time to disengage
Right.
from what this is, and you don't want it to just collapse and fall right away.
Right. Right. And
if we get a DeSantis in there, or a, what's her name, Nikki Haley or something,
Yeah.
or Trump or whatever, what are they going to lay down on the whole time they're in office? And it's
Right.
going to accelerate
right.
that collapse.
And furthermore, in these elections, and probably one of the biggest things I've learned the last decade is that your local elections are far more important than the federal. But
Yeah.
they have us thinking the opposite.
They want us focused up to something we can't touch or speak to
Right.
directly. Because here you can. Yvonne did it with Tea Party before.
Yeah.
Was actually there face to face with people, and you get the measure of them.
And then
She actually would say, Yvonne would say, she actually had a better time working with the Democrats.
rapport with the Democrats. Yes. The Republicans take you for granted.
And then they take you for granted, but then when you start showing up, they're like, "Oh no, you're upset in the apple cart."
Yeah, they're like, "Are you gonna be coming to every one of these meetings?" And I'm like, "Every one that I can."
That little aide for that
And he's
senator
like,
that wrote you that
"Ugh."
letter, that email.
Oh yeah, he was from the Young Republicans at University of Memphis. Cody something.
What a tool that guy.
Yeah.
That oozed with disdain for you.
That's
that
how
email.
they train them through
Yeah.
the parties. Yeah, I'm just not a fan of the party
You get
system.
your
But-
white press shirt and your penny loafers
Yeah.
on and your khakis,
The-
and you go into
best thing
battle.
that you could do is plant a garden and figure out who you're going to vote for sheriff.
Yeah.
Those two things.
And think about the different police chief versus a sheriff.
Right.
Police chiefs are appointed by mayors and
Mhm.
put in with city councilmen. Sheriffs are elected by the people.
Right.
And when this country was getting settled and spreading out and making up new states and stuff, there were sheriffs.
Right.
There were U.S. Marshals, but there were always sheriffs there. And then
Right.
police chiefs come later.
The sheriffs actually have a lot. They're actually more powerful than the president, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, we just challenge you to look at it different. Try not to get caught up in the left-right divide, because that division is a tool that they use to control us. And our fellow man is not the enemy.
Right.
Satan is. So anyway, I think that's about all we've got.
Pretty much. I mean, we had so many. This is the 50th.
Yeah.
There's another nostalgia. I had, with did Rome really fall, or do all leads lead to Rome?
Or I like the one are we the barbarians?
That's what I was just about to mention.
Are we the
barbarians at the gates? Because we did one about that, and we showed images of these barbarian kings.
Yeah.
They looked regal.
Right. Classy.
They looked better than the Roman counterparts.
They didn't look like barbarians.
And we're talking about, in the 5th century, 400, getting close to Rome's fall.
Yeah.
And we talked about in that one how Rome wasn't built in a day, it didn't fall in a day. And
Right.
so they were just so decadent in their cities, and they were just nihilism and just doing whatever,
Right.
And I think the barbarians, they were like, what the hell is this?
Right.
But we also talked about, we imagine that a lot of people in the countrysides, not a lot changed for them unless they were in the path of battles and stuff.
Right.
But what changed for them is if they had paid taxes, who they paid taxes to.
Yeah.
And so, people outside of those cities, it seems like cities over and
look
over
at the
again.
cities now, like they're just hellholes, and
over and over again throughout
get
history.
out of cities.
The cities
if
are
you can.
not the place to be. That's where the diseases come into play. And mostly
a lot of the
because
crime.
Dirty water and just basic functions just falling apart.
Get outside the city where you can plant a garden. Which if you're in the city, you can plant a garden in the city.
But a big part is just seeing it for what it is.
Yeah.
And saying no to more things than you used to.
And just turning off the TV, unplugging from the matrix, and plugging into the frequency of God, which is the truth. The good, the true, and the beautiful.
Oh, you know what? We need to show your other thing. events.
Oh yeah. I wanted to, as we close
this is current events.
Let me leave you with this, because we had the.
I'm going to go back to that.
Okay, we had the SVB.
Wait, I'll show SVB first.
That was the
Here's the first one.
Here's the first one. So before the bank run, this SVB fell in free fall 66.6%. There's our lovely 33 too.
Yeah.
But 66. So there's your 666,
which kills me is because banks are closed on the weekend. But during the weekend, this bank pops up in the news.
First Republic
plunged, and then on Monday
66 points. So what are the odds that both of those plunged that percentage? So I was wondering, look, we know that they use numbers and symbols as signals, or I don't know what we like
to see is, I think a lot of it's a wink from God.
Could it be divine?
I've got this
providence saying, look.
Anybody on either who has any kind of viewpoint on this could take it as a signal to them.
Yeah.
And we're not getting it. What is it? It's not numerology. What is it?
It might be gematria.
Gematria.
Yeah.
We're not.
All I'm saying is this wasn't a coincidence. That this is. There's something to this.
But when you see stuff like that, I like to point it out,
smile.
And we laugh at it.
I like it.
We just think it's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was SVB. But I was, I had this up before. There's the Shakespeare said,
beware the Ides of March.
The seer told Caesar, beware the Ides of March. And so then it's always a negative connotation.
Yeah.
And I found this small there was 3 definitions of apocalypse. And of course, number 2 and 3 are the typical doom and gloom, zombies and nuclear war and stuff. But one definition is the book of Revelation.
Right. That's interesting.
Apocalypse is revelation.
And revelation, I just think about what the word means.
Yeah. You're learning something. Something's being unveiled.
Awakening,
to you.
Right.
And then, like I said earlier, apocalypse, everybody as an individual, you go through this if you're open to it and tune in with God and pray for your discernment that you can start seeing what is real in this world. And Janet Yellen is not real.
Yeah.
And Bill Gates is not real. And I'm not the freaking train derailment in Ohio. Something, a train derailed, but
I read where East Palestine, it wasn't even named East Palestine until a few years ago. I've got to look into that. I saw it. Don't even know if that's true, but before this, I'd never heard of that city.
But they use real events to paint a story. The narrative is not what they.
And it's always about a story, a psyop to get you into the energy of fear.
That was another episode we did. His story,
right?
His story,
right. So, they're going to continue to have these stories and these psyops, but you can change the narrative just by not feeding it your negative energy and just turning it over to God.
And then that's what it's all about right here.
Right.
For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers,
and
against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places.
Right.
You are supposed to point this out. When you see it, you are supposed to point it out.
Right.
And like I said in the beginning, Jesus said, you will have trouble. That's part of it.
In this world is only trouble. Fear not, for I have overcome the world.
Yeah.
Phew, gives me chills. Life is good, y'all.
It's going to be all right.
Right.
If you're
plugged into the frequency of God.
Yeah. And I've been sitting out today looking at the sun, doing some sun gazing, and it just feels good.
It does, even with their seeded clouds all over the place. But anyway, that's all we got until next month.
We could say a couple of things we're looking into. One is Toronto Jew Bear that watches Owen with us. He gave us a great idea. It would be our first movie breakdown.
Yeah.
And it's on
October
Sky with Jake Gyllenhaal.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some
truth drops.
There's some
interesting things.
I remember when it came out, but I never saw it.
I was I can't go watch that.
We got to check that out.
But now I want to go watch everything because now I know that's where they put all the truth drops.
And then another we're looking at is I listen to Vox for good 4 or 5 years now. Vox Day.
Yeah.
He had brought up the other day, the Trinity debate, between Jim Bob and Owen. And I like Vox's take on it too, but he talks about, I believe in the original Nicene Creed.
Right.
And so I looked up to that and I looked into it. And I'm like, wow, there was something 58 years or so before the Nicene Creed that was agreed upon with under Emperor Constantine of Rome, who put that together. But that's an interesting thing. That's going to take a while.
Yeah.
And then we did an episode a couple years back, and it was about Iran, the revolution in '53, when our CIA helped Britain overthrow Mossadegh, who was a popularly elected, democracy.
Yeah.
In Iran, and
we've done that many times.
His bad thing was that he was going to try to take more of the oil profits from Iran's oil from the English,
British
Petroleum. It became BP. It was called, I can't remember. It was called something else then, but it became BP. He was going to keep more than 50% of the proceeds. And so you can't have that because, you can't have them profiting off their own natural resources.
Right.
So we overthrew this government, and come to find out we've got Norman Schwarzkopf Sr. His dad is very integral in helping convince the Shah to go back. But this Norman Schwarzkopf Sr. was also
in the Lindbergh kidnapping.
He was the first head of the New Jersey State Police when they formed
the state police.
So I've always been since then thinking about, we formed these state police, throughout all the states.
Right.
They're all pretty much the same in the same type of organization throughout the states. They're all formed in the 30s when they start building out the U.S. highway system.
Right.
And I've always just wondered about what was the deal with state police. And, right now they're like, oh, don't mess with state police, man. Don't mess with them. State troopers. But I tuned in a week or two ago to that movie, The Defiant Ones. It's Sidney Poitier and Tony Curtis, black and white. It's a 1958. They're in a black and white movie, but it's a black and white prisoners on a chain gang who escape, and they hate each other, but they're chained to each other. And I have never seen this movie. I happened to come in on this scene where they're getting up these posses, and it's local sheriffs and police and just local law enforcement. And there's a state trooper there, and he's on a horse. He's really martial looking with his uniform and very, a Barney Fife dressed up on his best day. And he's up on his horse, and he's barking all these orders to all these guys that are about to go out and look for these escaped prisoners.
Yeah.
And in the movie, the sheriff's deputies and all of them behind this guy's back are making fun of him and making faces and mocking him. So I just got into wondering. So when these state police organizations were first formed, were they considered a laughing stock?
Right.
Was it not, not revered, but, they call the state police in when they want to.
Because there does seem to be a lot of redundancy in law enforcement.
Yeah. And so that's another thing we're going to be digging into. But I guess that's all we have now. We're going to finish enjoying this beautiful day.
Yeah, and if you watch this and you like what you see, please share it. Yes.
G. Lauro.
We are bears, yes.
Oh, yeah, we do too.
I don't
we
have
do
a bear
appreciate
name.
the big bear. I did one a couple years ago. It's on the Beartaria app. I'm Climb Out Bear.
I think my grand piano it's Aeolian. I think I want to be Aeolian bear.
Well, I'll just see if you want to kind of paste.
I don't know.
In the comments. It's not doing it. I was going to try. We were going to try to have guests on.
Yeah.
G. Lauro. I've never seen him before. I'm not sure who he is.
Yeah.
Invite. Email. Messenger.
Oh, maybe
I already did that. But
anyway, if you like what you see here, we would ask that you would share it, like the video and share it, because we used to get lots of views on Periscope, but of course they had to end that for everybody. And
then the first time we went live on YouTube, we got almost 800 views.
And then
the next month it went to 50 something. And now it stays around 25, 30.
Yeah, it's kind of like Twitter. It seems throttled like Twitter. I don't know. Who knows? It's okay.
Yeah, they are good folks.
Yeah.
And we land on the side of Owen on this bull crap. Owen and Vox Dave. I really like Vox Dave's take on all that. He's very level-headed, even-keeled.
Yeah.
And he's
not
he
emotional.
Looks at it critically, no matter how close it is to him, and I think he's fair and honest.
I do too.
But I appreciate anybody who did come and watch this and share it. And
and then we'll see you next month. It'll be April 13th.
Yeah,
will be the Ides.
The Ides are usually on the 13th of the month.
Right.
They're the 15th on March, May, July, and October.
Right.
Maybe we do the movie one on October.
In October Sky.
Maybe we don't. Wait that
save
long.
it. Yeah, we'll see. Rim job. Yeah, I love that name.
I really love the rim job Podesta call.
Yeah.
Or James Abramovich was a good one too.
Right. You can take that off. Yeah. That plane was low down.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all we got.
Well,
until
thanks
next
for
month.
everybody watching. Share this and maybe get some more folks in here. We're not super polished, but we're as honest as we can be.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.